You know what's fascinating? I meet people all the time who tell me, Mr. Rohn, I wish I had the talent that person has. And I always tell them the same thing. Let me teach you something that's worth far more than talent. Let me teach you about discipline. Now, here's the thing about discipline. Anybody can have it. Isn't that interesting? Talent is something you're born with, but discipline, that's something you choose. And I'm going to tell you why discipline will beat talent every single time. Let me share something with you that my mentor, Mr. Schoaf, taught me years ago. He said, Jim, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. And you know what develops skills? Discipline, not talent, discipline. You see, talented people start at the top of the class, but disciplined people, they finish at the top of the class. And here's why. Talent without discipline is like an octopus on roller skates. There's plenty of movement, but you never know if it's going to be forward, backwards, or sideways. Let me tell you something interesting about discipline. It's the bridge between goals and accomplishment. Anybody can have goals. Talented people often have the biggest goals, but it's the disciplined people who actually accomplish them. Here's what's fascinating about discipline. It works while talent sleeps. Isn't that interesting? A talented person might work from 9 to 5, but discipline works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't take breaks. It doesn't call in sick. It doesn't ask for vacation time. Now, let me share with you the 5 major pieces of the discipline puzzle. First, it starts with showing up. You know what's interesting? Most people don't even do that. They've got all the talent in the world, but they don't show up. The disciplined person, they show up every single time. Number 2, they show up early. Isn't that fascinating? While talent is hitting the snooze button, discipline is already at work, preparing for the day. You see, discipline understands that the early bird gets more than the worm. It gets the whole day set up for success. Number 3, they stay late. Now, here's what's interesting about staying late. Talented people often watch the clock. They're thinking, when can I leave? But disciplined people, they watch their goals. They're thinking, what else can I accomplish? Number 4, they do what needs to be done, whether they feel like it or not. That's fascinating, isn't it? Talent waits for inspiration. Discipline creates its own inspiration through consistent action. And number 5, they keep doing it day after day after day. You see, talent is good for a day, maybe a week. But discipline is good for a lifetime. Let me tell you a story about 2 trees. One tree had all the talent in the world, perfect soil, perfect location, perfect genetics. The other tree, average in every way, but it had discipline. Every day it grew a little bit. Not much, just a little. You know what happened? Years later, the talented tree was still the same size. Why? Because it relied on its natural advantages. But the disciplined tree, it became a giant. Not because it was special, but because it was disciplined. Here's what's fascinating about discipline. It compounds. Isn't that interesting? Every little discipline action you take today doesn't just affect today. It affects tomorrow and the next day and the next year and the next year. Let me share with you the mathematics of discipline. If you improve just 1% every day through discipline, at the end of 1 year, you'll be 37 times better. Not 365% better, 37 times better. That's the power of compound discipline. Now, here's what's interesting about talented people. They often resist discipline because things have always come easily to them. Isn't that fascinating? The very thing they need most is the thing they're least likely to develop. But here's the reality. The marketplace doesn't care about your talent. The marketplace only cares about what you deliver. And discipline delivers every single time. Let me tell you about 2 kinds of pain. There's the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret, it weighs tons. And here's what's fascinating. You get to choose which one you'll carry. You know what else is interesting about discipline? It's the great equalizer. Talent creates inequality. Some people have it, some people don't. But discipline. Anybody can have discipline. You just have to choose it. Let me share with you the 7 disciplines that will beat talent every time. First, there's the discipline of showing up. You know what's fascinating about showing up? It's that most people don't. They've got all the talent in the world, but they don't show up. Second, there's the discipline of starting. Now, here's what's interesting about starting. Talented people often wait for the perfect moment. But disciplined people, they start now, they start where they are. They start with what they have. Third, there's the discipline of consistency. Talented people can afford to be inconsistent because their talent will bail them out. But disciplined people, they can't afford inconsistency, so they don't allow it. Fourth, there's the discipline of focus. Isn't it interesting how talented people often try to do everything? But disciplined people, they do one thing and they do it well. They understand that the power of concentration beats the power of talent every time. Fifth, there's the discipline of learning. Talented people often think they know it all. But disciplined people, they're always learning, always growing, always developing. They understand that education is not just preparation for life, education is life itself. Sixth, there's the discipline of persistence. You know what's fascinating about persistence? Talent quits when it's tired. Discipline quits when it's done. And seventh, there's the discipline of excellence. Talented people often settle for good enough because they can. But disciplined people, they never settle. They understand that excellence is not an act, but a habit. Let me tell you something interesting about these 7 disciplines. They work whether you believe in them or not. Isn't that fascinating? Talent needs confidence to work, but discipline just needs consistency. Here's what else is fascinating about discipline. It creates its own motivation. Talented people wait to feel motivated, but disciplined people, they understand that motivation is a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite. Let me share with you the 3 enemies of discipline. First, there's procrastination. You know what's interesting about procrastination? It's the assassination of opportunity by the hands of delay. Second, there's excuse making. Now, here's what's fascinating about excuses. They're the tools of incompetence built by the lazy to create monuments of nothingness. And third, there's comfort. Isn't it interesting how comfort can be the enemy of progress? Talented people often get too comfortable, but disciplined people, they understand that comfort is the enemy of growth. Let me tell you about the relationship between discipline and time. Talented people often think in terms of days or weeks, but disciplined people, they think in terms of decades. They understand that discipline is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You know what else is fascinating about discipline? It's predictable. Talent can be unpredictable. Sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't. But discipline shows up every single time. Let me share with you the 4 seasons of discipline. First, there's the season of action, doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Second, there's the season of patience, waiting for your disciplined actions to bear fruit. Third, there's a season of harvest, reaping the rewards of your discipline. And fourth, there's the season of reinvestment, taking what you've gained through discipline and investing it back into more discipline. Now, here's what's interesting about these seasons. Talented people often want to skip straight to the harvest. But disciplined people, they understand that you can't skip seasons. You have to go through them all. Let me tell you about the miracle of discipline. You know what's fascinating about miracles? Most people wait for them. But disciplined people, they create them one disciplined action at a time. Here's what else is interesting about discipline. It's transparent. Talent can hide behind smoke and mirrors. But discipline is visible in everything you do, everything you say, everything you create. Let me share with you the 5 laws of discipline. First, there's the law of diminishing intent. The longer you wait to do something you should do now, the greater the odds that you will never actually do it. Second, there's the law of accumulation. Every disciplined action adds up. Every undisciplined action takes away. Isn't that fascinating? Your life is always moving in one direction or the other through your disciplined or undisciplined actions. Third, there's the law of momentum. Discipline creates momentum, and momentum makes everything easier. You know what's interesting about momentum? Talent can create it quickly, but only discipline can maintain it. Fourth, there's the law of compensation. The marketplace pays for value, and value is created through discipline, not talent. Isn't that fascinating? Your talent might get you in the door, but it's your discipline that keeps you in the room. And fifth, there's the law of persistence. Discipline persists when talent gives up. Now, here's what's interesting about persistence. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Let me tell you about the relationship between discipline and success. Talented people often think success is about ability. But disciplined people, they understand that success is about accountability. Here's what's fascinating about accountability. Talent can dodge it, but discipline embraces it. Why? Because disciplined people understand that accountability is the gateway to improvement. Let me share with you the 6 qualities of disciplined people. First, they're committed. You know what's interesting about commitment? Talent makes promises, but discipline keeps them. Second, they're consistent. Now, here's what's fascinating about consistency. It's not about doing extraordinary things, about doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. Third, they're patient. Isn't it interesting how talented people often want instant results? But disciplined people, they understand that the best things in life require time and persistence. Fourth, they're focused. You know what's fascinating about focus? Talent can afford to be scattered, but discipline requires concentration. Fifth, they're resilient. Now, here's what's interesting about resilience. Talent might help you bounce back once or twice, but discipline helps you bounce back every single time. And sixth, they're humble. Isn't that fascinating? Talented people often let success go to their heads, but disciplined people, they let success go to their habits. Let me tell you about the relationship between discipline and opportunity. Talented people wait for opportunities. But disciplined people, they create opportunities through their consistent actions. Here's what else is fascinating about discipline. It's democratic. Talent is aristocratic. Some have it, some don't. But discipline. Anybody can have discipline if they're willing to pay the price. Let me share with you the 4 prices of discipline. First, there's the price of sacrifice. You know what's interesting about sacrifice? Talented people often aren't willing to make it because they've never had to. Second, there's the price of discomfort. Now, here's what's fascinating about discomfort. Talent tries to avoid it, but discipline embraces it as the pathway to growth. Third, there's the price of consistency. Isn't it interesting how talented people often think they can skip days or take shortcuts? But disciplined people, they understand that consistency is the key to mastery. And fourth, there's the price of patience. You know what's fascinating about patience? Talent wants results now, but discipline is willing to wait for the harvest. Let me tell you about the relationship between discipline and goals. Talented people often set goals based on their abilities. But disciplined people, they set goals based on their aspirations. Here's what's interesting about aspirations. They require more than talent to achieve. They require discipline day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Let me share with you the 5 truths about discipline. First, discipline is a choice. You know what's fascinating about choices? They reveal your priorities. Second, discipline is a habit. Now, here's what's interesting about habits. They're created through consistent action, not through talent. Third, discipline is a system. Isn't that fascinating? While talent relies on inspiration, discipline relies on systems. Fourth, discipline is a lifestyle. You know what's interesting about lifestyles? They're not about what you do occasionally, they're about what you do consistently. And fifth, discipline is a legacy. Now, here's what's fascinating about legacies. Talent might be remembered, but discipline is repeated. Let me tell you about the relationship between discipline and leadership. Talented leaders often rely on their charisma, but disciplined leaders, they rely on their character. Here's what else is interesting about discipline. It's contagious. When people see discipline in action, they're inspired to become more disciplined themselves. Let me share with you the 3 promises of discipline. First, discipline promises progress. You know what's fascinating about progress? It's not about how fast you go, it's about how long you can keep going. Second, discipline promises peace of mind. Now, here's what's interesting about peace of mind. Talent can't buy it, but discipline can build it. And third, discipline promises fulfillment. Isn't that fascinating? While talent might bring success, only discipline brings satisfaction. Let me tell you about the relationship between discipline and time management. Talented people often think they can make up for lost time. But disciplined people, they don't lose time in the first place. Here's what's fascinating about time management. It's not about managing time, it's about managing yourself. And that requires discipline, not talent. Let me share with you the 4 rewards of discipline. First, there's the reward of achievement. You know what's interesting about achievement? Talent might get you there, but only discipline keeps you there. Second, there's the reward of growth. Now, here's what's fascinating about growth. It's not about how much talent you start with, it's about how much discipline you apply. Third, there's the reward of respect. Isn't it interesting how talented people often command attention, but disciplined people command respect? And fourth, there's the reward of legacy. You know what's fascinating about legacy? Talent dies with the person, but discipline lives on through the lives it touches. Let me tell you something else about discipline. It's the ultimate form of self-respect. When you choose discipline, you're choosing to honor your potential over your preferences. Here's what's interesting about potential. Talent shows you what's possible, but discipline makes it probable. Isn't that fascinating? Possibility without probability is just wishful thinking. Let me share with you the final truth about discipline. It's the highest form of self-love. You know why? Because when you choose discipline, you're choosing long-term happiness over short-term pleasure. And that, my friends, is why discipline beats talent every single time. Not sometimes, not occasionally, but every single time. Because talent is given, but discipline is chosen. Talent is natural, but discipline is intentional. Talent is about potential, but discipline is about performance. Remember this, life doesn't respond to talent. Life responds to discipline. The marketplace doesn't reward talent. The marketplace rewards performance. And performance isn't about what you can do, it's about what you will do. So let me ask you, what will you do with this message? Will you continue to wish for more talent? Or will you begin to develop more discipline? The choice is yours, but the consequences belong to everyone you could have served with your discipline. Choose discipline. Choose it today. Choose it tomorrow. Choose it every day for the rest of your life. Because discipline beats talent every single time, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. That's the message I want to leave with you today. Not because it's popular, but because it's true. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's necessary. Not because it's what you wanted to hear, but because it's what you needed to hear. Remember, discipline beats talent every single time. Every single time. And that's worth thinking about, isn't it?